Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 cheapest countries to live in. We've all been there, sat at work on a spectacularly boring day, gazing out of the window and dreaming about moving somewhere less absolutely meh. But it's one thing dreaming about moving to London or Paris or Tokyo, and quite another turning up there, looking at the square feet of space your meager earnings will buy, and realizing that you hadn't thought this through at all. The good news is that it doesn't have to be this way. While there are plenty of countries it will likely bankrupt you to move to, there are plenty more where even the most middle-of-the-road foreign incomes will see you live like a king. Here are 10 countries gleaned from the annual cost of living indices published by Numbeo and Expatizan, where it's cheapest to live in 2017. Number 10. Mexico. America's southern neighbor is mainly famous in the north for sombreros, Tex-Mex, and drug violence. But as we revealed in a recent video, there's so much more to the ancient home of the Aztecs and all that. Aside from the long history and the vibrant culture of Mexico City, there's some 60-odd indigenous groups speaking a mix of languages, there are crumbling Aztec ruins, unique traditions from each Mexican state, and coastline galore. Oh, and did we mention that it's very cheap? Numbeo estimates the cost of living in Mexico to be nearly 60% lower than living in the US. Outside the capital, you can rent a 3-bedroom apartment near the center of the city for an average of $480 a month. You can get a meal for 2 in a decent restaurant for $20. And a transport ticket costs under 40 cents. Of course, this is all assuming you're moving abroad with a US salary or pension. In terms of local purchasing power, Mexico sits somewhere in the middle of the list, meaning a local on the average wage can maybe buy half the stuff a local on the average wage in the US can. Number 9. Tunisia. Alright, well, it would probably be stretching it to the limits of acceptable writing to describe Tunisia as the jewel in North Africa's crown, but we're gonna do it anyway. The tiny desert nation is home to 10 million people, all crammed into a handful of ancient cities that are staggeringly beautiful. This is the place where all of the Tatooine scenes were filmed for the first Star Wars, which should give you some idea of how visually arresting the country is. Then there's the crazy affordability. The cost of renting a 1-bed apartment in the bustling city centre is about $160 a month. Now, on the other hand, Tunisia does suffer a downside that Mexico doesn't, and that's that it borders Libya. Since the collapse of the Gaddafi regime in 2011, Libya has been a haven for ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and, well, about a bazillion other crazy rebel groups, all itching to kill Western tourists. In 2015, an armed gunman trained in Libya attacked a 5-star hotel, killing 38 people, including 30 Brits, making it the deadliest day for UK citizens since the 7/7 London bombings a decade earlier. As a result, the UK Foreign Office now advises against all but essential travel to Tunisia. The US government likewise advises extreme caution when visiting. Number 8. Moldova. Hands up who can point to Moldova on a map. Eastern Europe's least visited country is a tiny sliver of land sandwiched between Romania and Ukraine and locked in a perpetual war with its pro-Russian population. We don't mean that metaphorically. Moldova's eastern flank has been occupied since the early 1990s by an insurgent army who set up their own autonomous state. This state is a republic known as Transnistria. Although the conflict is frozen, no one has been killed in ages, it is still a potential flashpoint in Europe's poorest nation. On the other hand, if you don't mind the Soviet architecture, cold winters, and the possibility of Putin annexing your living room, Moldova has got a lot going for it. Aside from being crazy cheap, the cost of living is 62% lower than in the US, it's one of the biggest wine-producing nations on Earth, with over 200 kilometers of tunnels filled with wine buried beneath one monastery. Plus, Chisinau is getting a reputation as one of Europe's party capitals. Double plus, you get to say that you've lived in Moldova. How many of your friends can say that? Well, we're betting it's none. Number 7. Nepal. It's the country where Everest lives. That's all you really need to know about Nepal, a fascinating mountain nation that has been wowing travelers ever since they first set eyes on it. Sagarmatha, as the locals call it, is just the biggest of the world-class peaks dotting this frozen, high-altitude land, each sheerer and scarier than the last. If that wasn't enough, there's also ancient Buddhist temples, mysterious mountain villages, and wild elephants you can actually ride. And oh yes, this is actually a real thing, so just shut up and take our money. Speaking of money, Nepal is actually kind of an odd one. Numbeo ranks it as a hair more expensive than Mexico, but Expatistan ranks Kathmandu as cheaper than any city in Moldova, so we're adding it here just to be on the safe side. However, before you jump on that plane, we should warn you that not everything is so peachy. In 2015, Kathmandu suffered a horrifying earthquake that killed 10,000 people and nearly leveled the city. The damage costs were equivalent to 50% of Nepal's GDP, and reconstruction is still barely underway. Although locals would doubtless appreciate you adding your tourist dollars to the local economy, it's perhaps still a bit soon to think about moving permanently. Number 6. Syria. Oh yeah, Syria. We're not exaggerating when we say Syria was once one of the most beautiful places on Earth. If you don't believe us, just check out some of the pictures we're showing here. It was a land of mountains and winding rivers and valleys and ancient castles and cities that have been standing since the dawn of time. As the Syrian Tourist Board is currently at pains to point out, a stretch of coast about 120 miles long that has miraculously avoided the fighting remains wonderful. Also, it's about 63% cheaper than living in the US. Of course, even the relatively safe coastline isn't somewhere you should be heading anytime soon. Since 2011, Syria has been caught up in the deadliest civil war of the century, with an estimated 250,000 being killed and around 4 million being left homeless. ISIS, Al-Qaeda and other groups are fighting Kurdish paramilitaries, Assad's regime forces, and about 100 other rebel factions as Russian jets scream overhead, dropping bombs. It isn't a safe place, but even a war as awful as this can't last forever. Perhaps in another decade or so, outsiders will be able to go back in and witness the beauty of the Middle East's most tragic country. Number 5. Azerbaijan. You didn't expect a wealthy petrostate to be on this list, did you? Situated on the shores of the Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan is a oil-rich collision of east and west, a place where glass towers dominate the money-soaked capital, and a dictator has made a hobby out of jailing democracy activists. About the size of South Carolina or Scotland, the Land of Fire is both a hyper-expensive Dubai of the Caucasus region and a place where you can rent an apartment for less than $150 per month. So what's with this great contrast? Well, you know how New York and California seem to suck in all the money and energy, and London is like Britain's New York City plus Britain's Silicon Valley? Baku is like London plus every single other city that isn't in terminal decline. The rest of the country is basically a rural world of farming sheep and kicking back and eking out an existence on an average wage of $260 a month, an amount that makes $150 for an apartment suddenly look like daylight robbery. Still, at least you get to live in a country that has a place called Fire Mountain that is really a mountain that is literally on fire. Number 4. Georgia. If you want all the excitement of living in the Caucasus region, but for some inexplicable reason don't dig the idea of residing within driving distance of a flaming fire mountain, you could always opt for Georgia. The Christian flip side to Azerbaijan's Muslim culture, the two neighbors are historic allies, largely due to a mutual dislike of nearby Armenia. The big difference comes with their neighbors to the north. While Azerbaijan and Russia have a cold yet cordial relationship, Georgia got invaded by Putin in 2008. Since then, the tiny Ossetia region has been under de facto Russian control in a situation kinda like that of Moldova and Transnistria. Only Georgia has the additional headache of another area like that. The unrecognized Republic of Abkhazia declared independence years ago, with Moscow guaranteeing its territorial integrity, meaning Tbilisi actually has control of far less of its 69,000 square kilometer territory than most similarly sized nations. On the plus side, Georgia is perfect if you like untouched wilderness, craggy peaks, and little mountain villages lost to time. And if you like beer, well, it costs 70 cents, which is a really important thing. Number 3. Pakistan. If you want a potentially short life of non-stop excitement, you could do worse than moving to Pakistan. India's long-term rival, Pakistan, is home to Karachi, the world's most violent megacity, an unrecognized republic controlled by insurgents known as Balochistan, deadly terror groups, armed kidnappers, and the occasional mega-earthquake. It's also a nuclear state that frequently tries to start wars with other nuclear states, India. In fact, Pakistan is so fundamentally wild that its government recently issued a decree that all foreigners must stay within a single city unless they hire a security detail and inform the government of their travel plans in case they wind up with a severe case of death. With advice like that, hearing that an apartment can go for as little as $77 per month likely comes as cold comfort. Number 2. Ukraine. According to Numbeo, Ukraine is home to the cheapest McDonald's combo meal in the whole of Europe. You can get a Big Mac, fries, and a drink for under $2.50. We're not going to say this is a good reason for you to pack your bags and head to Ukraine, but it's certainly a reason. Another being that life in Ukraine is 65% cheaper than life in America. Not that this is much use to the locals, though. The average salary across the whole nation is under $200 a month. As a result, Ukraine only just misses the bottom 10 countries for local purchasing power, ranking under Zimbabwe, Moldova, and El Salvador, and only just higher than Nigeria and Nepal. An average Ukrainian salary will buy you 26% of what an average American salary will buy you. Then there's the not quite frozen conflict in the country's east, which has killed about 10,000 people in nearly 3 years. Once again, as with so many things on this list, yes, Russia is involved. On the other hand, if you can stomach the screaming inequality, unbelievably cold winters, and territorial crisis, then Ukraine is breathtakingly beautiful. There's its snatch of haunting mountains in the west, its two great ancient cities of Lviv and Kiev, and finally, its ridiculously good-looking citizens. Number 1. India. This is it, possibly the cheapest country on planet Earth. India has mid-range restaurants where two people can eat for a world-beating $10. It has taxis that will wait for you for an hour and charge you less than $1. It has apartments for slightly over $100 per month. In the southern city of, well, it's a place where I'm definitely going to screw up the pronunciation, but Thiruvananthapuram, utilities can cost $20 a month. With an income of $1,000 a month, you could live like a king. It's also, famously one of the most picturesque nations on Earth. There's the Taj Mahal, the ancient city of Varanasi, the Himalayas, Raj-era hill towns, creaking old railway lines, the lush tropical south, and the venerated, epic, eternal Ganges. You've got Bollywood, curry, tigers, ancient history, epic gorges, friendly people, and a floating temple that is literally made of gold. Plus, Octopussy was set here. Man, we must have seen that movie, well, twice, maybe? Of course, it ain't all fun and highly choreographed dance numbers. There's shocking inequality, extreme poverty, deadly diseases, sporadic ethnic violence, and the eternal possibility of nuclear war with Pakistan. But is it worth it? Well, you've seen the pictures that we're showing in this entry, and the correct answer is yes. So I really hope you liked that video. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.